Hello, my name is Solomon Elua and this is Social Work 305 Portfolio Artifact video. My portfolio project is Societal Discrimination Against Single Mothers. I chose this from a personal and professional perspective. I happen to work as a crisis intervention worker at a shelter that caters for women fleeing domestic abuse. So I came in contact with a few of them, and from the personal perspective of being raised by a single mom, I decided to choose on this because ever since I came to Canada, I have always wondered how people had viewed single parents. I have had personal experiences, I have spoken to friends, and when I got the opportunity to take this diversity and oppression course, I decided that this is one of the things that I would want to learn because it's easy for me to actually just work with the anti-oppressive feminist theories and still not understand how it works, because first and foremost, I am a man, obviously, and secondly, it's easy to get carried away by literature and policies, but it's better to actually get the true feel of what the situation looks like when you interact with the people living that experience. So for the medium I used to create my project, I decided to do a cardboard sketch simply because it's the easiest form of expression for me. I express myself more when I speak, and but it's purer for me when I actually sketch out what I feel, what I learn. And from the experience I've had at work, sometimes during intake, most of the clients we work with, which are women, they do not tell the entirety of their story just simply because they are probably answering pre-existing questions that do not cover the underlying factors that created the situations they found themselves. So I chose this medium because I want to also learn how to determine underlying factors. I intend to keep this video within 10 to 15 minutes just so that I could actually answer all the questions within the rubric of my artifact presentation. So I also decided to challenge myself by integrating my sketching skills, which is not the greatest, but I wanted to use this as an opportunity to better myself, challenge myself, and I decided not to write out my reflection but speak on it, just because I'm also trying as well to work on public speaking. If I were to be a social worker that would go into the community to work with people, I would actually learn the skill of public speaking. So that's why I chose a video. And the project is encompassed within the theme of diversity and oppression. For my artifacts and my learning theme, it's encompassed simply because I decided that from what I have known personally before I took this course, or before I even started working as a crisis intervention worker, I only know things from my oppressive point of view. But the diverse culture in Canada, being that regardless of race, regardless of age, regardless of sexuality, the oppression single mothers face are most likely the same, regardless of your class. Now, the intersecting oppression is what makes it different and unique. And I was able to capture that by my learning activities, because I decided to do interviews, I read articles, and I watched videos. I spoke to people, I heard about experiences, and then I used some of the things that I have seen at workplace to fuse in my artifact. By the way, my artifact is just right behind me here, but we'll go into details once I go off camera to show you what I have done and how I came about those things. My learning goals were represented by images formed as cloud. My artifact is a sketch of a tree because it's easy for me to actually express womanhood through a tree, because a tree produces fruits, and the trees have different composition, the roots which we do not see, the branches which we see, and it's just how I viewed society against single mothers. We actually look at the tree and all we see is what we think of the tree, our perspective of the tree. But upon closer reflection, realize that the tree actually is held down by its roots. And those are the underlying causes that we as prospective social workers or practicing social workers do not always see all the time. And that's where my learning activities were represented in the roots, just to understand where all this issues that we do not see that causes us to actually prejudge single mothers. Because from my experience, what I have learned so far is the problem is the label. But guess what? We'll get to that soon enough. I would go off screen right now so that we can focus on my artifact. I would show you what each composition entails. So, see ya. Now, this is my artifact. Like I said earlier, it's a tree, and if you notice, I put the word single mother just in front of it as bold as possible so that one could see it at a glance. And this is how society decides to actually view these women. They just look at a glance. At first, all you see is a tree, and that's how we see. All we see is our co-workers, our neighbors, our family relatives. We see them as people until the label is attached, which then brings the judgment. Oh, now it's a single mother. And then we begin to have all this judgment. So what we do not understand is that there are underlying issues that we do not see, like the roots. And these are the poverty they go through. This is the family alienation, sexism, housing stereotypes, inadequate government support, gender-based violence, which actually might be the root cause of why some of them decide as single parent, end up being single parent, not because it's their choice. Some of them is as a result of early childhood trauma, cultural prejudice, ageism, unemployment, racism, or even just disrespect. So it goes a whole long way to actually show what these women go through. My learning goals were to identify the ways the discrimination occurs and the possible solutions. And I actually showed that by the purple writings encompassing the tree and the clouds surrounding them. So in community, most of them are not always seen as the best role models. That's how community has seen them. And I got all of this from my interviews and some of the videos I had watched in school. These are the things that still happens in social gatherings, even as social workers interacting with them at the hospital, at the workplace, in the justice system, and in the family, in their social life, in dating, and even from the legal perspective. They actually have these issues of seclusion, of prejudice, of oppression. And if we are to look at possible solutions from the community, we need to support them. From the school perspective, you need to actually engage them as team members and not look at them with pity. In social gatherings, there should always be inclusion, make them feel part of community. As social workers, we should treat them with equity. They are also human beings. They are first human beings before any other thing. The label should not be what determines what we see. In the hospital, they should be given adequate care. At the workplace, they should be given equal opportunity. In the justice system, they should be swift within the RCMP and the Edmonton Police, because that's where I live. They should actually be swift justice. Within the family circle, there should be pure and true love. In the dating and social perspective, there should be mutual respect. But unfortunately, from the experiences I got, most of these women are just the way we see the trees. I put the branches attached to this because all of these are labels, and these labels could be removed at any time. This is what we see. This is what many people see when they hear the term single mothers. They see opportunities, they see extra baggage, they see failures, they see them as promiscuous, they see them as weak, they pity them, which I'm guilty of. Some of them see them as lazy. And if you notice, I put some blank spots here because some people do not actually have a reason, but they judge regardless. And this fruit here, the basket of the fruit, represents their children. So most people would actually, the way I viewed it is that most people would actually interact with a tree for what they could get. But when they realize that someone else has already produced fruits, they say, oh, I do not want to carry extra baggage. And the reason why I used multiple colors is just to show the diversity of women from different racial background, different social status, different sexuality, is to show the diversity of women that go through the same type of oppression. So, back to me. And I would want to round up by mentioning my personal learnings I have learned from my learning agreement. One of them is I acknowledge my privilege as a man, and I also acknowledge how I have oppressed by enabling the label single mother. I don't know why we as society would actually tag someone a single mother, because if you look at it from the male perspective, if society sees a single dad, he is often celebrated. They see him as doing the extra mile, when it's just the same thing a single mother does, but those prejudices are not attached to the male. So I recognize my privilege, and I also recognize being part of the oppression. And the second personal learnings I learned is I see the need now to actually share all of which I have learned, because I felt that without taking this course, I would not be open to going through all these activities and learning as much as I do now. So I think it's my personal duty to actually tell as many people what I have known and find a way to change the narrative. And also from the personal perspective, from the professional perspective, I have two other learnings that I've also achieved from my learning agreement. And one of them is to always be trauma informed when working with clients, because most times we see women with children fleeing domestic abuse, and we just follow through the white paper policies that our organizations have already laid down in helping them, but we do not always focus on the root causes of these issues. Sometimes many of these women have early childhood trauma which had actually affect them their entire life. Some of them were due to the culture they were raised in, and it has actually put them at a place of oppression. Some of them is religion, some of them is their immediate community, some of them even comes from their family. So it's a whole lot, but being trauma informed, which I've just learned, helps me to identify the underlying cause why certain things happen to these women. The second learning is I would learn to help them professionally beyond those organizational plans, because it's easy to actually go through an intake asking premeditated question that only gives also premeditated answers. But it goes beyond that. It's as a professional social worker, which I hope to be, I actually intend to actually interact with these women on deeper levels, understanding where these root causes are and finding ways to actually solving them, giving them a sense of self-actualization. Because the reason why I would say I'm guilty of also fueling the oppression is because based on my experience, I actually thought that offering sympathy is a way of showing support. Offering sympathy, or pity rather, I would use, is actually oppressive, because sometimes people do not need pity. People just need to be treated as human beings. Give them the opportunity to self-actualize, because pity often sends a message of them being unable to actualize themselves, them being unable to achieve things for themselves. But when you give them the ability and opportunity to thrive themselves, then we actually empower them into self-actualization. There should be equal opportunities for housing. There should be legislations that would actually not allow landlords to discriminate against who they want to give housings to. And the same thing with employers of labor. Most of the single women single mothers that we actually see as not being able to find work, or that are even under the poverty line, are simply because they want to work, but employers of labor always find a way to stereotype them. And all of these were actually represented in my portfolio, because I was able to express myself, and I want to use this learning to show others that they could also express themselves. And hopefully, in the long run, we are able to change the narrative from the label, because the system actually created a label and society just fuels what is there. So thank you for listening, and I hope to continue my learning journey. Bye for now.